Hello, everyone. My name is Cyndy McDonald. I'm an educator, entrepreneur, and also more recently a producer. I'm an instructor for the UCLA College Counseling Certificate Program. And this is one of my interviews in my series of interviews with experts in fields that we address as counselors and educators working with students in their journeys toward higher education and looking at college. And today I have with me one of my great friends and experts, Chris Andersson, nothing but drama from New York City. Chris, I'm so glad to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So Chris, this is something that you've been doing a really long time. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to be the person that offers these kind of help students and families understand what it takes to do drama at the college level? Because that's what we're going to talk about today. Is it's a very specific area that a lot of times people don't know a lot about. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I spent about 25 years in higher education administration, working pretty much exclusively, actually just exclusively with theater students. My last job in that was as the director of admissions for the drama department at NYU Tisch School of the Arts. I did that for about 12 years. So I oversaw the whole artistic review process for students who were applying to the university. And along the way, I learned about becoming an independent educational consultant. And I thought, this might be a nice way to, expand what I do, be able to work more closely with students one-on-one. So I started doing that a little bit on the side while I was still working at NYU. And then eventually the business grew. And I decided to leave NYU and move into becoming an independent educational consultant for as my full-time job. So I work now with theater students, film students, dramatic writing students who are applying to undergraduate or graduate programs in those fields, and I help them with the navigating the artistic side of things, the artistic review process, and also help them with, if they need it, with the application process as well. So it's been a fun journey. It's a lot of fun to work with artists, and that's kind of how I came to where I am.
So how is their journey different? The student who's going into those creative arts or theater, how is that different from a student that's maybe doing STEM or just English per se?
Yeah, it's different. I think there's a lot of extra. There is extra work that they're doing when they're balancing their academics and their artistic work. If they're doing plays after school, or they're practicing their musical instruments, or they're painting, whatever they do as artists, it's a lot of extra time, in addition to wanting to keep up your grades and keep your schoolwork going and keeping that afloat. You still want your artistic soul fed. So you have all this extra work and time that you're devoting to that, much like athletes, similar, right? I think there are elements of training that come in as well. Students take voice lessons, they take dance classes, they take art classes. So they really continue to grow as artists over the time that they're in school. So I think there's more to think about. And when they get to that college application time, there's this whole second process. It's basically a parallel process to the college application process, this artistic review. So that's its own set of dates and deadlines and requirements and guidelines to sift through and materials to gather. So it's really twice the work for arts students and their families and their counselors, I would say.
And you mentioned different, like these two parallel and different deadlines, and some of that includes auditions and audition tapes. And are they able to do this all virtually, like send in their auditions, or do they have to plan some of this for in person?
I would say both are the options. And for quite some time, I think both were options, but it was mainly in-person auditions. after COVID, when everyone realized, oh, we can actually do all of them online if we wanted to. I think that has stuck with a lot of schools. So there's a robust option for students who can't be come to an in-person artistic review, or a live, I should say, or no, I guess it would be in-person artistic review. There's usually a video option. Most schools have moved to a Zoom situation, which really is nice. It's great for international students because they can now not, if they, they don't have to fly over here. The whole family doesn't have to fly over here to go to auditions. Sometimes the auditions for in other countries fall at exam time, or times when the students can't go because of their school schedule. So this actually makes these programs accessible to them because they actually can do an online. And I think most schools are doing it now live online. So it's really as close to an in-person artistic review as they can. They do their monologues, for example, for the acting kids online. And then they have maybe a little conversation with the evaluator in kind of just like this, right? It's just one-on-one, and then they're done with their artistic review. So both are options. I think the in-person one, if you're able to go, it's wonderful because you get to see the school. If you haven't seen it already, you get to meet some students who are in the department, often are there helping out. And so they have people you can talk to. So there's benefits there, but I will say too that in some of the video, the online auditions, they'll put some current students in the waiting room so you can talk to them too. So they're trying to really make it, I think, an equitable opportunity for everybody, whether you come in person or you do it live online.
So is it easy for parents and students or us as counselors to figure out what all those parts are that they have to do?
It is figure outable. It is a lot of extra stuff, as I was mentioning before. But it's not impossible to manage. All the schools do post their artistic review requirements online, usually I would say probably by the end of the summer, in preparation for the upcoming year, so that you can review exactly what you need to prepare. They'll list the dates of the actual artistic reviews. They'll list deadlines for if you have to register for your artistic review, there might be a deadline for that. You might have to upload some material ahead of time. There's a process called pre-screening, which is like a first round of auditions where some programs, a lot of musical theater programs and some acting programs, ask students to upload material, upload monologue videos, song videos, maybe a dance video for the faculty to review. And then they invite students based on the videos to come for a live artistic review, either in person or online. So that's sort of a first round, but that means the deadlines to have your material ready is a little bit earlier because that usually happens in the fall semester. So there are a lot of parts, and there are people out there to help you if you need it. But the information is pretty out there on the websites. It's just a lot of research and a lot of spreadsheets.
Yeah, and that's what I've found in my experience. Even here in Central California, it's there, but oftentimes it's kind of hidden, and you really have to search for it. And some schools or programs, you have to do the audition or anything before you can even apply. So some have audition as a required part of it, and others it's not. And so, just managing all of that can be.
Yes. Sorry to interrupt you, but you're bringing up a really good point, is that all of these guidelines you're right, they vary from school to school. So that's where it can get a little bit mind jumbling, because you are like, okay, right, which school am I applying first and then auditioning? Which one am I auditioning first and applying? What are they requiring me to do? So that you're right, it can be a bit confusing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And that's why it's good to start that journey a little bit early. You can't decide some fall of your senior year, oh, I'm going to apply to this drama program. It might be a little more complicated than that. So,
Indeed.
just like athletes, you mentioned athletes. sometimes, and going back to this too, we think we're good, where they're a big fish in this little pond at our little high school, and gee, I want to go on and do drama. I see that a lot in my community because we do have a really good drama programs. But how do you really assess the quality? Like, is this person have the talent and the ability to go on? How do you figure that out?
That is a big question that I get from counselors, from parents. Can you assess my student? I've never done an assessment of the students before I take them on, because I feel like this is a dream they have. And if they want to follow it, I'm here to help them do that and let them do that and support that. I don't want to be the dream crusher and say, well, I don't know. But what I'm able to do, at least with my knowledge, having done thousands of auditions, I'm able to at least get a sense of where the student is in that sort of nebulous talent world. To then, in kind of as we're moving along and as we start working together, I can kind of get a better sense, and I'm able to maybe adjust expectations a little bit very gently. I'm able to suggest maybe some other programs, because just like STEM students who are looking at the very tippy top schools sometimes, so are the arts students. So the theater students are looking at some of the very, very tippy top schools, and the programs are really tiny. And so many, many talented kids don't get into them. So you want to kind of spread that. So I feel like I personally prefer to let the school make the decision, because I feel if a student is dreaming about this, or even about a particular school sometimes, but if they're dreaming about this and they don't give it a shot, they're gonna regret it for the rest of their life, because they're gonna be like, I wonder what it would have happened if I had actually auditioned.
Right. I agree with you. I try not to discourage students. I try to give them a realistic, so that applies no matter what, whether it's arts, sports, or engineering, whatever. It's just giving them a realistic, and then letting them decide which choices they're going to go with. Right. So does it matter? How much does it, you mentioned having this variety of different programs, how much does it matter whether they go to a top program like NYU or Northwestern, or another program that's considered strong but may not have the same reputation?
I would say, essentially, right, a student who is, if you are, like a BFA program will be much more specialized in skills in a certain part of theater making, right? The BAs are a little broader. I would say going to a program, that's going to teach you how to be an actor, right? I feel that, there are ways to do it, and there are skills that you need to learn. And, there are a lot of great programs out there and a lot of places that you can learn what you need to do. I think the kind of the bigger name schools, there's a cachet there, on one hand. On a second hand, there is, the alumni network of a school that you go to is a valuable thing, no matter what field you're in, of course. But certainly in the arts, and certainly in theater, that helps. However, as I mentioned, a lot of these programs are small, so the networks are what they are. But there are alumni networks for all of these programs, so it's not exclusive to the top tier schools. Also, on the third hand, I would say, a lot of the way people get jobs is through these auditions. And it's what happens in the room. And are you right for the part? It kind of, if they're like, you're doing what we need you to do, and we are exactly what we're looking for, they don't care where you went to school. And, I've in some research online, if you look at famous actors, or, let's say with actors, there's a wide variety of schools that the famous people have gone to, a wide variety of programs, a wide variety of types of majors. Some of them did BFAs in acting. Some did BAs in theater. Some did BAs in other subjects. Some didn't even go to college. So you feel like it's really ends up being what you bring to it, who you know. Networking is important, and then what you bring to the room when you're auditioning. So yeah, that'd
Well,
be
that
my
makes
answer.
sense.
My
No,
long.
I think that's really appropriate, and then kind of relieves parents and students a little bit, feeling like I have to get into this particular program for me to be able to make my goals happen. And you're not limited by those. Now, you mentioned conservatories, BFAs, BAs. Can you talk about the difference in those, Chris?
Sure, sure. So I look at the schools like they're on a spectrum, basically, from a full conservatory on one end to a liberal arts college or university on the other end. And I would say on this end, it's like an arts conservatory. It's not a program that's living within a greater university. It's something where it'll be all theater all the time for those students, right? There's the artistic component where you're getting all the professional training, where you're taking all your classes in acting technique and vocal technique and dance and movement and script analysis and scene study and improvisation and singing and all that delicious, yummy stuff you're going to drama school for, right? You will also have an academic component there. There's always academics, which is, we call them theater studies courses, which are theater history, dramatic literature, and dramatic theory, and lots of very specific courses listed under those. But at a conservatory, the major percentage of your coursework will be done within that department. It's possible you'll have a course or two outside it, but that's generally what's going to happen. On the other end of the spectrum, at a liberal arts college or university, in let's say a BA program is more broad. It's not as specialized as being a BFA in acting or in directing or in design and production. So it's a little bit broader. It's training you to be a theater maker. It exposes you to all aspects of theater, so that it might be for someone, like someone on the conservatory side might know, this is what I want to do, right? For my career. This person might say, I love theater so much and I love so many things in it, I don't know what I want to do. So great, then this gives you an opportunity to explore all those things, and maybe somewhere along the line you start to realize, oh, I'm actually a writer and a director, and that's kind of where I'm going. But it gives you the opportunity to do that. The other thing that's different is that if you have a BA in theater, this is what I did undergrad, was a BA in theater. Your classes are classes just like, your acting classes and singing classes and dance classes are classes just like your English and philosophy and history classes are. So you can only take maybe 5 classes a semester. So, you have to make some decisions. And on the other end, in the conservatory, you're in these long studio days where you're taking all those courses that I just mentioned, but you're in studio all day long. So there's a lot, it's a different, the BA on this end is less intense, less immersive than the conservatory training. Then you have the third category, which is a BFA that is within a university, where there's a balance of artistic and academic work a little bit more so, where, for example, maybe the program has 3 full studio days where you're doing all of this stuff, and then 2 academic days, which are those theater studies classes, but also general education classes and electives. So that, and some of them give you the freedom, it varies from school to school, give you the freedom to study things outside in depth a little bit, maybe minor in another academic subject, even double major in another academic subject in some cases. So that's something to look at if you are a student who's like, I'm totally arts, but I love school. Maybe something like that is something to look at, just to keep you being able to do all the things you want to do. Or like I said, a BA also allows that you can study theater and you can bring other things in. And there's a nice thing about getting outside of just theater, just in your studio, to learn about the world and learn about other things, because you bring all that stuff back in to the studio and it informs your work there. So those 3 kind of spots on this spectrum, I'm not saying that one is better than the other. They're all just different. It's really about what's right for you, what's right for your student, and what's going to work the best for them.
I have found that to be the case too. And it goes back to the same concept that we always talk about and focus on as counselor and advisors, is that best fit, and looking for it. And for some students, it might be the conservatory, and other students, it's the BA or the, the BFA is kind of in the middle. And I always ask students, like, do you want to be only surrounded with artists and creative, or do you want to have other people that you interact with too? So, it does, sometimes they hadn't thought about those kinds of things. They like the idea of taking all these classes and focusing on their craft and their love and their passion, but it does give them opportunity to think about that. So that's a great explanation. I love that. So when a student's doing an audition and they have to come do an audition, are there certain tips that you give them about like do's and don'ts? If there are certain things, like I always tell students when they're writing their college essays, don't use "I Have a Dream" by Martin Luther King. It's cliche, people have heard it, be a little more original. In fact, don't use quotes at all, but that's a different story. But are there certain things, auditions and things that when they're doing the auditions that they should kind of look for or consider to make a good audition? What do they need to do to make a good audition?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. First is to follow the guidelines that the school provides you. They're essentially across the board, it's roughly the same idea. It's a couple of monologues for an acting audition, couple of monologues, and maybe a question or two or a conversation you have with them or not. They have relatively similar parameters for the monologues. They have to be from published plays. They have to be, a certain length. They ask for either 2 contemporary monologues, 1 contemporary and 1 classical, or 1 contemporary and your choice of contemporary or classical for your second monologue. And that's pretty general guidelines, but you really want to make sure that you're following what the school asks, each school asks. So that's helpful. That's setting you up for success. You're going to memorize your monologue and go in there and knock them dead. But the key, I think, in all of this, the purpose of the artistic review really is for us to discover where you are, where the student is in their own artistic development. Where are they right now in their own artistic growth? Like almost like taking a little snapshot of them right now. And then that's what we want to know. Wherever they are in their own artistic growth is great. We just want to know where that is. So it's more an assessment. We're not really judging them, if that makes sense. So we're trying to say like, well, what aspects of this art form are they trying to make sense of? What aspects, do they need work in? So that's what we're looking at. So the best thing the students can do, the best things you can recommend to your students to do is to really be themselves. I say this to students all the time. I'm like, it's cheesy, but I'm going to say it, be yourself, because they're their most unique when they're being themselves. And this is art stuff. This is art. We want to know who you are as an artist and a person, and what are you passionate about, and what are you interested in the world? What do you want to make art about? So the more honest and truthful you can be about yourself and just be in the moment with your evaluator. And if you're having a conversation, just have a conversation. That's super helpful. I would also say, just forget and get out of your head about, don't think what the evaluators might want to hear you say or want you to do as a monologue or anything like that, because you have no way of knowing. That's a useless exercise, is to think what they want. You need to go in there and say, I'm an artist. And I know I keep saying you, but this is, I know for your students that, when I'm saying to students, like, you go in there and you are actually sharing something you love with people who love it too. They're acting teachers. This is what they've done with their lives. They're teaching young people how to become actors. So they love this. It's not a challenge here. You're actually, it's a win-win situation when you walk in the door. So the best you can do is find material that's good, that's well written, that gives you stuff to work with, and also that jazzes the student, that maybe they connect with the material. That's not a requirement, but maybe if they connect with the material or relate to it in some way, they might, it just gives them a little bit more ownership of it. And if they find material that they're so excited about and they're so love to do, well, that's the stuff they should bring into the audition room, because that passion and that enthusiasm, it's going to shine through in all the auditions they're going to do. So I would say the most authentic that they can be as artists, sharing stuff that they love to do, and being themselves when they talk to their evaluators is really the best way to prepare for them.
And, that love, that passion, or that connection that they make to their material will shine. I mean, it'll be obvious. And that is definitely one of the things students often think, well, I will do what I think they want us to do. And that's, that's the wrong step right off the very beginning. Just you have control. It's your audition. You make it happen, right?
Right. That's right. It's like the applications. We say the same thing, right? This is your
exactly.
Thing.
So one last question, Chris. So many people who go into this, and I'm thinking about my own son who started off in a theater arts major, and I'll share a little bit about what his journey has been. But they start off in this area, but they don't necessarily become actor or end up in musical theater. I mean, some of these areas are highly competitive, but how do those majors, that training benefit them? What else does that do for them?
I would say, because this question will come up a lot in info sessions from parents, especially parents who say that this is our first arts kid, we have no idea what we're doing. And I would say, and they would ask about that. And I'd say, look, we talk about actor training, especially actor training, as training for life. Again, sounds cheesy, but it's really true, because as artists, as actors, specifically, they do a lot of work where they're kind of going inside and kind of digging around inside themselves, right? And they're getting to know themselves. Sometimes they're unearthing things to let go so they can be freer artists. So they're doing a lot of personal introspective work, which is great for maturation and growth and all that wonderful stuff. They're also learning, all sorts of skills that work in any type of a field: teamwork, collaboration, support, trust, all these wonderful things. They're learning improvisation skills, which means they're going to be great interviewers, because you go for a job interview and they're like, ask me anything. Like, I'll have an answer for you. They're used to being in the spotlight. They're used to being on stage. So there's a personability. I don't know if that's even a word, personableness about them that, is helpful in social situations. And so we have found, I had a teacher once who said to me, I have written, from our drama department, I have written recommendation letters for medical school, law school, divinity school, like all sorts of stuff. And if you think about it, if you go into teaching, if you're a teacher and you have a classroom of 30 little 8-year-olds and you have to keep them entertained for 6 hours, that is one long performance, right? A trial lawyer, performance, any kind of public speaking, customer service. Actor training really can help you in so many ways. So it's not, even if you do, and many people don't stay in it. Many people go into it, and it's theater is a field with a lot of different ways you can be in it. It's not just about the actors. There is so much more to making theater, and there's places for people within the field. But then many students go on to other things. Production and design students go on to work for event management companies. They're putting on like things like the Super Bowl, halftime show, so they're all, we have one alum who was designing the set for the Academy Awards. So like they can really branch out. It's really, I think, great training for kind of whatever you want to do. It wouldn't be when parents are trepidatious, it wouldn't be a waste of time, I don't think.
Right. No, I totally agree. There's so many skills that they learn that can be transferred to so many different areas. And so that's definitely, and that's what happened with my son. He started off, in theater arts, did that, loved it, and then thought, okay. And he was also a gamer. So I was like, well, if I wanted, I want to do creative writing. He has his vivid imagination that he always kept. So he thought, well, I'm going to write for the role plays and things in games. So he switched over to creative writing, which his school had that. I had a strong creative writing program. And then he realized, okay, well, if I'm going to do these roles and write this, I maybe should know a little bit about programming and how games are written. So then he went into computer science. And so, he went from acting to computer science. And, we would have never predicted that. Most people wouldn't have, but, it was a very natural arts for him. And he ended up doing, he's still down that path, but he's done audiobooks. He's a voice actor for audiobooks, and he's got a great great bass baritone voice. And so, he's been building that up. And I know people who make really good money reading books for audio and things like that. So yeah, there's definitely a benefit to that. So
Absolutely, that's amazing. He could also voice his own characters in the games, right?
yeah,
That's a whole other option.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely. So, Chris, thank you so much. This has just been so informative, and I know we could spend another hour on this. So, we'll touch back with you at another time. But thank you very much for your time.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so happy to be here. And best of luck to everybody.